You watch one video and they tell you to shift your hips towards the target. You watch another video, they tell you to rotate your hips more. How can all these coaches have different answers on the golf swing? Here's the problem. These coaches are usually only teaching one lower body movement pattern. They don't take into consideration that golfers are built differently and they make different pivots on their backswing, which is going to dictate how their hips should move in the downswing. There's only 3 ways that someone can pivot in their backswing. They can keep their left hip in the same spot and rotate around that. They can rotate both hips around their pelvis, or they can keep their right hip in the same spot and rotate their left hip back. Those are the only 3 ways that you can pivot, and you have to be one of those players. In this video, I'm going to show you a simple pivot test that's going to tell you what the right answer is and show you how your hips should move in the downswing. So before we get into that test, I'm going to clear up some confusion on how your lower body moves in the downswing. We're going to start with a person who rotates around their left hip. We call that person a front post player. What they're going to do in their backswing, they're going to have very little shift to their trail side, a lot of rotation with their hips in the backswing, and they're going to get to their lead side very early. Their dominant force in their downswing is going to be a vertical push with that ground because they don't have a ton of lateral slide. What you'll see them do is start to rotate their hips and immediately push and extend their hips to the target. Early extension is a bad thing. Extension in general is not a bad thing. Don't be afraid of extending your hips. And this is whether you're a front post or a rear post player or a center post player. So what you're going to see is a lot of push with their lead leg and a lot of jump off of the ground. The front post player is going to get a little bit more spin with their hips when they start their swing because they get a bit more turn with it during the backswing, and now they go into extension a little bit sooner. If you were to look at their golf swing from a down the line view, they're not going to have a lot of rotation like this. What you're going to see is their hips are going to stay a little bit more square. They're still going to be open to the target line, but they're not going to be quite as open as a center or a rear post player. You might see their hips not stay deep. They might do a little bit of extending like this. Take a look at someone like Rory McIlroy. He's a front post player. He actually will push his hips off of that wall a little bit. I don't think anyone's going to argue about how good he is with his golf swing. Next, we'll go with the center post player, someone who's going to rotate both hips around their pelvis. They're going to get more load into their trail side, a lot more than what the front post player does, but they're still not going to get a ton of lateral shift. They're going to be pretty neutral with how much sway they have with their hips and how much turn they have. There's another thing. Sway is not a bad thing. We do have to have some lateral move towards the target with our hips, no matter what type of player we are. The center post player is going to have to make sure that they keep their hips closed just a little bit longer. The one thing that a center post player does that's a big mistake with their swing is they tend to spin out. We can't just spin the hips out to start our downswing. We have to load into our lead side first. What you'll see with a center post player from a down the line view, they're going to have some more rotation than what the front post player does. They're going to keep their hips on that wall a little bit better, but they're really not going to get them too deep. You should never see your hips, if you're a center post player, coming off of that wall and having too much extension. So their swing's going to look a little bit more like this. And then we have the rear post player. A rear post player is going to post up on their right side. Their right hip's going to stay here, and their left hip is going to turn like this. They're going to get the most rotation you're going to be able to see the most of their, essentially their butt cheeks when they get to impact. They're going to have the most amount of lateral slide because they're shifting so much weight to their rear side. Now, the first move they're going to have to make on the downswing, especially with this player, they're going to have to make sure they keep their hips closed just a little bit longer to start their downswing. So we should start to see with the rear post player a little bit more of a lateral push, and it's kind of diagonal too. Because our hips are closed, we want to see a diagonal push, then they rotate nice and low, keeping their hips deep. So their swing's going to look a little bit more like this. So here's the pivot test I want you to take to understand which of these is your natural pivot. We're going to take two clubs. One club we put in between our legs like this. It's going to go in front of our lead foot, behind our trail foot. We get into our golf stance and put our club on our hips like this. And what I want you to do is rotate just your lower body to match these two clubs up. You're going to find if you try each of those three spots that one of them is going to feel pretty easy. The other two are going to be a little bit tougher. For me, I naturally pivot around my lead hip. If I tried to swing like a center post or a rear post player, it would be really tough. I'd have a really hard time hitting a good golf shot.
Okay, you see what he did? He French fried when he should have pizzaed. You French fry when you pizza, you're gonna have a bad time.
As you can tell, all three of those players have some kind of element of extension, rotation, and sway with their lower body. It just depends on what your natural pivot is of how much of each of those that you want to do. So before you go and copy another hip drill from YouTube, figure out which pivot pattern actually fits your body. A rear post player is going to need more lateral slide. A center post player is going to need more rotation, and a front post player is going to need more extension with their hips. None of these are wrong. You just don't want to make the mistake of trying to do the wrong move that doesn't fit your natural lower body pattern. Take the pivot test. Let me know in the comments what your swing DNA is. Make sure to hit the like and subscribe button below, because I'm going to keep showing you how your natural pivot patterns affect all parts of your golf game. If you want to take the complete swing DNA test, make sure to hit me up at this phone number right here, or hit me up on the V1 Sports app. Let's start building your game from the ground up. Until next time, we'll catch you later.